Welcome back to the Queens of Quality. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Michelin.
And today I'd like to introduce our guest, Sherice Mills, who is the founder of ADROIT Risk Management.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Sari. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Sherry and I met initially a very long time ago in a galaxy very far away. We both worked on a REMS group together back in the days before we had video conferencing and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Very, very distant past.
And we still work in the REM space. All three of us still work in the REM space.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today is REMS and risk management and what some of the challenges are with those and what we can do to make our lives easier in that. So who would like to start?
I think Sherry should go as our guest.
So making our lives easier in the REM space. And how long are we going to be talking today?
Okay, let me narrow it down a little bit. So one of the things that we talked about before we started recording was that what we really need to be is patient focused. You know, we really need to remember that this is about the patient. It's about the patient safety. It's about patient health. And I really feel like we've lost that piece in, across drug device development. Like we have a tendency, even though that's our end goal, we have a tendency to forget that part.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think if we could somehow just have this whole mindset shift to patient first, actually in our actions and not just when we write it somewhere or when we say it in our delivery, we could solve a lot of the challenges that we have in.
Sorry, Michelin, stop. We jumped right into like the 401 class. So this is like a lot of people may not even know what REMS even stands for. We haven't even talked about that. So like granted, these are people, chances are we're targeting people in the industry kind of thing, but we haven't actually explained that what a REMS is. Like we're assuming that they know what it is. So I think we need to kind of
go back
and say, okay, this is what we're going to be, this is why we brought Sherry here today. This is why, besides the fact that she's my friend and I know her. And we're just going to sit here and laugh the whole time. So there you go.
We need to qualify what we're talking about. I didn't know. So REMS is not a normal topic on the show.
We do the whole quality space kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and we've been kind of like,
so we can do some more back and forth on the space and what it's meant to do and involvement in different programs and over the years what we've seen and where we are now.
Because the first one was thalidomide, wasn't it?
Yes.
So to give that context, because a lot of people may know what thalidomide is, kind of thing, and understand that people were born with partial limbs and all that kind of stuff, So, but that's where kind of like bringing the history to the present kind of thing, because there's no context.
I nominate Jen to do that. So we're going to go back to where I said, who would like to start?
Sure. Hold on 1 second, you guys. I'm looking this up. What was the thalidomide reference?
So back in the 1950s and 60s,
thalidomide was kind of the birth of drug safety.
Drug safety. That's what I was trying to grab. Because I was making a reference to.
But I think it was also the first REMS.
risk management, or the risk maps were born out of what was happening with Accutane.
Right.
Well, aren't you lucky?
Right. I mean, and these are basically, I mean, these are, again, if you're in the industry, they're products that you've heard about. You may not necessarily have worked on them or know exactly, but that's where, again, trying to connect the dots for people, in terms of this is why it's important and this is why it's patient first kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll walk through. I'm just gonna follow your lead, Jen.
Okay, who would like to start?
Okay, I'll start because today's episode is primarily around REMS. So what a REMS program is, it's very specific for the FDA, and it stands for your risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. So that's on the US side. People have a tendency to talk about things in the same breath with risk management plans as defined by the EMA. They both have risk in the title, but they're not the same thing. So let's just start with that. They are not the same thing. And I know a lot of people get them very confused and they talk about them in the same breath and they're not related. So where the REMS came from and how the FDA started was, if we go in the Wayback Machine, and this is even before Michelin and Sherry met. So we're going back even further into the 50s and 60s, and some people may be familiar with the thalidomide babies. And what happened there is that, particularly in Europe, thalidomide was being used as a sleep agent for pregnant women. What they didn't realize is that it stunted growth of cells. Therefore, a lot of the babies were born with, up to their elbow, or some fingers missing, or, some of the appendages just did not develop as you would expect normally. They were able to trace that back to thalidomide use. So enter, I know she's one of my favorites, Michelin, I know you've talked about her too, Frances Kelsey. So she was one of the first women to work for the FDA, and she actually pushed back on the approval for thalidomide in the US, which is why you don't see a whole lot of the thalidomide babies, if any, in the US. As a result of that, because she pushed back because she did not like what she was seeing in terms of the science. So she actually avoided, to help us all avoid that piece of it by her persistence in really ensuring that the risk to the patients was mitigated. So that's where she starts. Bring it forward a couple of decades later, these types of things continue to happen. We have a thing called risk maps. That is really kind of born out of Accutane. Again, these are all things that people may have heard of in their day-to-day life. That continues to evolve into essentially what we know today as a REMS program. And I'm going to ask for help in terms of the history. It was 2005?
2007 at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sherry.
Mm-hmm. Gave this authority to require manufacturers to put some additional safety measures in place when the FDA thought that the benefit of the drug was outweighed by the risk associated. And they required that the safety of the drug be extended beyond just the label and have some additional safety measures in place for that drug. Mm-hmm. And so today, thanks to the great work done by all of those before us in risk management, we've progressed. And now it's our responsibility to keep it progressing forward even more. And I think that where we are today with REMS and risk management and patient safety, and the FDA really trying to corral all these different things in so that it's meaningful and they can be the savior of the day, if you will, for those drugs that could cause us harm unintentionally, of course. We have a duty to make sure that we continue to innovate in this space where the FDA has asked us to be safe. It's up to us to find not only the safest way to do things, but maybe the most efficient way, because if we don't, the patient is yet harmed again, but yet in a different way. You know, that financial harm is just as meaningful as physical and mental a lot of times. And so being good stewards of the space that we are working in, I think is where we find ourselves. And it is upon us to make those changes to make it easier for patients to receive these very important therapies.
Yeah. And one thing I want to just touch on, because again, a REMS is, as you rightly noted, it's something that the FDA mandates for a post-market, a product that they agree should come into the commercial space and still have additional measures associated with it. It can take a variety of shapes and forms. You know, if I stick with the thalidomide example, that's a pregnancy registry. It has, again, additional materials to inform people, because thalidomide is still used today. It hasn't come off the shelves.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That it's important to note that thalidomide is currently prescribed.
Right. You know, and that's where, again, having these additional risk measures and that understanding as to what the risks are, because every product carries a risk. Every risk is relative. Kind of thing. So it's again about making informed decisions for the patients to be able to make informed decisions. To do that, we have to inform the people who, I'll call it, connect with them, and that would be the physicians / prescribers. You know, maybe it's a PA or something, you know, someone of that nature, or the people in the pharmacy. So again, lots of different shapes and forms. We've had databases, we have educational materials, we have registries. What are some of the other modes in which we continue to evaluate the risk?
Yeah, I think you know, we are often asked to have certain medical tests recorded, and those results will drive the next step. So the risk management continuum, you know, goes from something very simple as an exchange of information all the way to something as intrusive as a liver toxicity test. And so we have to be thoughtful about how those things all work together. I think that there has been an enormous amount of effort around risk management in its, you know, silos, but it would be very critical to innovation for us to start thinking about it in a more collective manner, in a more synergistic manner, where we think about the patient first is truly what drives us. And so if the patient is first, then our systems and our boundaries and our geographies should not keep us from having a watchful safety eye on them, no matter where they fill their script. And so if their script is filled here in the United States, or in Germany, or in Spain, or in Ireland, wherever they fill their script, if it's the same product, then you would imagine the same safety measures would be the requirement. Given that different countries have their own individual, you know, regulatory steps that are in place for various reasons. From a universal perspective, there's no reason that we could not have something much more connected for the sake of the patient.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that part up, because my favorite example around that is, you know, even in the EU, you have EMA, but then each nation state within the EMA has their own specific nuanced requirements. So everybody's got a quirk.
Everybody has one, but I think that is where, you know, it doesn't have to be that way, because it's always been that way. Like, they're going to have their quirks. But does that have to be a boundary for us finding something more universal for the patient? Is there something else that could be a connective tissue for this patient that is moving about the cabin, if you will, freely?
Absolutely.
And how do you start to think about it a little different? Because those quirks, as you call them, will be there. Those regulations are not going to go anywhere. There are many reasons they may be there. There may be some that, just cause, boundary issues for no reason. That could be the case. But even knowing that that could be the case, just think above it. How can you sit above those things when it comes to the patient? And I think that's where we're challenged with, to think about how to innovate in the space. It's not really about, we've all run into the challenges with vendors, or the challenges with, where we sit with the quality that a vendor may be providing in the space, or how many vendors are available to choose from. And so if you are having quality issues, it makes it very difficult to go anywhere if you don't have an expanded vendor pool in the space. That's a challenge. How do we rise above that being a challenge? How do we think about it much larger than just a vendor that's available to us, and so this is the only solution that we can offer when it comes to patient safety? How about we say this is what patient safety looks like, and we challenge the vendors to rise to the occasion to deliver that level of connectivity? And so I think that the opportunity is very, very current for us to think about it differently. I think the FDA has given us roadmaps on how we could do these things. I don't think that we're going to expect that the FDA will provide us who will do it and how they'll get it done. Prescribers already have a stake in the game. Pharmacists have been partnered in this space for a very long time. Patients have nowhere to go but to the pharmacies or the prescribers to receive their therapy, so they will be along for the ride and should be the focus of how we innovate. And so if we start to think about just making all of those stakeholders' lives easier and maintaining the level of quality around risk management for the patient, and that becomes the target of how we think about innovating, I think we may find our way around some of those quirks that have been in our way.
Yeah. And if I could, because I know, Sherry, you're an expert in this field, to give people a little bit of context in terms of the current state of affairs, we'll call it.
Yes.
There are a lot. I mentioned that REMS programs can take a lot of different shapes and forms. So I'll take a very traditional example, I'll try and keep it simple, knowing that the REM space is not. So kind of bear with me on that piece of it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I
So
was like, I can't wait to see this. We're going to try to keep it simple, and we're talking about a REMS. Are you sure? Are you on the right call?
right.
Did you get
So
lost?
right for the probably. So just just help me get found, okay?
Okay. I got you.
I know you do. So for, again, very basic example, additional education materials are necessary for a patient to receive. They have to register at a database, and they meaning the FDA, require a survey or follow up with the physicians and other stakeholders, like Sherry, you mentioned the pharmacists, that have an understanding of what the risks are for a particular product. So in that relatively simple example, there are 3 different mechanisms at play. So we've now made it complicated to the third power. Yeah, because you need to make sure that the information gets to the patient, not just the prescriber. It needs to get to the patient. The patient needs to register, and then we need to circle back with the physician to ensure the physician and the pharmacy know about the program and are ensuring that whatever other pieces, because chances are there's other pieces.
It's just a small chance.
Right, yeah. So those
Absolutely.
other pieces are being addressed appropriately. So in that little itty bitty bit of an example, there are 3 different avenues. And everyone in the pharmaceutical industry outsources. We all do it. Okay.
It's not going to stop.
Right. So this space, in a very relative sense, is new. It's 15 years old. Many people didn't know what to do, didn't understand what the expectations were. They got their approval and they're like, what is a REMS? And then they give it to their vendor to figure out.
And if I could just grab right there.
Please.
Because I can't tell you how important it is for the industry to understand who's driving right now. It's not the FDA. It's not even the industry partners. The limitation is in the technology and the options that we have to deliver on these requirements as an industry. A manufacturer can design and build their REMS program the way they need, as long as they are delivering and meeting the requirements from the regulator. But the limitations happen with the technology and solutions that are available to deliver on. The platforms are not changing. And so we can't innovate if we stay on the same type platforms and think that we're going to change. I'm sorry, can somebody give me the definition of insanity? I'll be right here.
Right. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Right. So we have to recognize where the challenge is. And once we recognize where that challenge is, then we can start to massage those things and bring in some new ways of thinking, walking, working, and delivering for patients, if we really want to make it patient first.
Okay, but we talk about that, and so by saying this, and we've been in meetings where this has been discussed, and people say,
but that's the way we've always done it.
Oh my God, that actually makes me want to stab myself in the eye.
I may want to grab on that topic as well, maybe a little bit. So we also should contextualize that idea, because therein too lies the problem of how we choose those that are going to lead organizations today, right? Because we think about leadership and we think that means only those that have had this history of number of years of experience in the space can qualify as a leader in this space. And so we'll put them in charge, and then we'll put all these really fresh, innovative people under them. And then the dynamic
like a bug
starts to change, because that leader who's always done things this way is there for the purpose of making sure things get done that way. And that new, fresh, innovative bunch of talent that you just spent all of your hard time seeking out, recruiting, and hiring is going, what? But if we just thought, if we just tried, but if we, and they're told, no, that's not why I'm here. And so then the idea that the FDA is introducing new ways to, slim down how much adverse event reporting is showing up for the sake of being able to see those very critical data points that are being collected. And all the companies do is, but we've always done it this way, and we need to keep doing it this way. And so the innovation runs into a brick wall, because the companies have always done it this way, and the new, fresh talent does not have the opportunity to grab onto these new ideas and bring them forward. And so putting that into context, you have to understand we're not just fighting about innovation to make it better for patients. We're fighting a mindset. And until we can have a shift in mindset about how patient first really shows up and what that means, not just at the independent consultant level or even at the FDA's level, but also at those organizations and how they think about innovation, we're going to keep running into a challenge until we can make a dent in that. We will start to maybe see some daylight in innovation for patients actually receiving therapy and the critical care whenever they need it without all of the obstacles that may come along with the way we do things today.
Okay, so here's a couple of questions. So now we've identified it. We know like what needs to happen as far as changing the mindset, but we also know that the bigger the drivers in this space are not going to be anxious to give up their stranglehold that they have on what it is that we're doing there. And I also want to point out, like, we're all consultants in this space, and we don't qualify as those bigger vendors. But how do we get in the door so that we can propose some of these to the sponsor organizations, you know, to the drivers? Because this is also a shift. Like, okay, so we talk a lot about how the sponsor is the ultimate responsible party for all things related to drug development. You know, like if their sponsor name is on it. So one of the things that I've been working on within Metis World is making sure that there are people within the sponsor organization who understand that. And it's like, I know that you don't necessarily get all of it, but you need to get enough of it. You need to have enough of a level of expertise in-house that you can drive that and oversee that and make sure that you're not just nodding your head along with whatever it is that's proposed.
Well,
so how do we make that change?
Absolutely. And so I still think that the name of the game is partnership, right? Because what you've seen happen over the years, just in the shared REMS space, right? So a shared REMS is manufacturers come together around a common family of product to create this REMS program for the larger industry as a whole, right? And the idea is all of these have like or synergistic risk that you're trying to mitigate, and a patient can access these drugs through this one program. In that world, the shift that happened over the years is original REMS consortiums looked for a single vendor to deliver on everything that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
That quickly became a challenge because you may have some things that need to change, and it means you have to change a lot just to change one thing at the way things were set up. Vendors have become a lot more agile over the years, so that may not still be a problem. But what you saw was partnerships being built with vendors supporting different aspects of the larger program.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that changes much. I think that you still will have these partnerships, but I think you also have to think about understanding what the change needs to look like as a vendor. If you learn it one way, you have to challenge your organization to continue to innovate. And if you learn that this is what the FDA accepts, and that's what you tell your partner, your manufacturer or sponsor that you're working with, that's what is accepted at the FDA, that's what they're going to trust. And if that's all you ever bring to the FDA, then that's all the FDA ever has a chance to approve. So if you're not innovative enough to think about what could be different to put in front of the FDA as a vendor, then you're stalling progress and innovation for patient safety. And so those vendors have to challenge their organization to also be innovative, think outside the box, be willing to share with your sponsor that you, or at least understand the industry enough to know where you can innovate versus where you're putting them at risk of not receiving approval. If you only do things the safe way because that's what you've always done to get their approval, then this is where our industry will stay, because these vendors are hearing this, are providing this information to the manufacturers, and that's all they're hearing because they just need an approval right now, right? You have to find a way to balance making sure you're supporting your partner the right way so that they get that information across the way it's expected for their approval that they're seeking, but you also have to be able to understand how to navigate the waters with the agency for innovative ways when it comes to patient safety and making something better. That's the challenge that we're all fighting today. So I think the partnership piece is still going to be very relevant, but I think the innovation actually has to happen on all three fronts. The FDA is providing us the insight and the regulation and the guidance. Manufacturers are making very important therapeutic products for patients to get that to them. They innovate when they think about the products that they're making. They have to also innovate in how they think about patient safety. And more importantly, right now, our consulting community, the vendor, the service providers, all those partners have to also stretch out of their comfort zone, learn the space more, and be willing to innovate in a way that they can manage that process for their partner, but also manage innovation for patients.
You want me to go? Because I agree with everything you said. The one piece that I would offer to add into that is that trusted advisor role. And what I've seen, and I kind of hear it blended in the vendor piece of what you're saying, Sherry, because again, we all outsource, the entire industry. I don't know a company that doesn't, kind of thing, because you need additional staff and you need people to augment what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, there's that level of expertise that may not necessarily be available within the different vendors, because they haven't worked in the space, because the space is relatively new, because they're going to propose to their potential client the way they just did it, because that's the way they've always done it. They know it'll work, kind of thing. They're not going to go out on that limb and say, well, maybe you should do it a little bit different. So to have someone like a Metis in terms of being that trusted advisor to help the sponsor company through that process, through what is actually available versus what they're going to be given, kind of thing, what is available to them so that the patient is first, things are done efficiently, you can actually do things effectively and demonstrate everything that you're doing to be able to show the health authority in the end that you are mitigating the risks as much as possible, because there's always going to be a risk, kind of thing. So that's the one piece that I think that there's actually 4 different parties in that ecosystem, for lack of a better term, because actually I'm thinking about one of my clients. Was working with them probably a year and a half ago, and their audit program, people were like, why do we have to have an audit program? And I was like, well, how else would you evaluate your strategy, type of thing? And like, again, they didn't even connect it in that way, because they weren't familiar with the space.
And that is definitely the road that I traveled into the space, right? Yes. Because it was a number of things that already had me thinking, like, how do we just get this mind shift, this shift about everything's there for us to do these things. It's right. Already laid out. We have the talent, we have the opportunity, we even have the technology. We just need to do it. But if we can't break this fever of, well, that's what we know got approved and that's how we have to do it, then we're never going to move forward. Right. And so I've been accused of having moxie a little bit. So
that's how we like you.
Why not bring that on over to the space and take things up a bit, and let's try some new things.
Yeah,
I certainly have some battle scars to work from, and yeah. I'm more than happy to use them for the advancement of patient safety. So, I think we just need to we have an amazing organization that's been put in place now through Rick, where a lot of the exchange of ideas can happen. There are a number of opportunities to think about how to do things differently. And I'm so excited to be in a space to hopefully participate however I can in that shift in how we think about patients.
And for anyone new to the space, Rick is the REMS Industry Consortium.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Rick.
Shout out to Rick.
And we strongly encourage, everyone with a REMS program or involved in a REMS program to please get involved with the Rick.
That's where the idea exchange is going to happen. That's where you're going to find out, what the pulse of the industry is and how the movement is going to take place. It's absolutely critical, whether you are new to the space, you've been in the space a long time, you're looking to get out of the space. I know there are some people doing that too, but patient safety doesn't stop with REMS. It certainly doesn't stop in the United States. And so the next frontier is, how do we bring these things together with rest of world? There's absolutely no reason that we can't think about this in a larger way to help our regulators, solve for some of the problems that patients have to face, because we just maybe haven't thought about it yet. And maybe there's not a big leap from where we are today about how we do things, but I certainly know that there is absolutely room for improvement, and I'm here for that in the space and excited to see it happen.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the opportunities coming forward. I think there are a number of meetings and conferences that are going to be prime for sharing some of the new ideas. I'm hopeful to see more vendors popping up in the space, offering services, and really helping to move this along. I know artificial intelligence is very high on my list of seeing how it will be a partner in the space. It certainly is not going to be able to control anything. And it's hopefully not being skewed as being something bad, because it's helpful. It's been with us for many years already. It's not really all that new. It's just kind of the hot topic, the new shiny object, if you will. And I think we should take a hold of it and have it shine for REMS for a little bit.
Absolutely. And, kind of on that note, I shared with y'all before we started the recording, this is the kind of stuff that we're looking for, is what can we do to innovate? And that was something that was talked about a little bit at the RIC meeting this past year. Jen and I have had multiple conversations about AI and how that's going to go.
Well, we're going to just find out, because I'm kicking off a workshop with you guys. So I'm excited about what we're going to do with that. I think looking at all of the different, I don't think that AI stops because it's in a particular space, right? So we can adopt it and bring it into the space. It doesn't have to necessarily be that the vendor has had all this experience in REMS or risk management. It's really about exploring what the opportunities are and not staying limited to our little space. What's out there that we can use and bring in. So I'm excited to explore that with a number of different thought leaders in the space with you all and see what we can do.
And I absolutely think that there is a malleability to the use of AI within the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm ready to name my robot right now.
I so desperately want to know, but I don't know if this is the forum to we'll say that for the grand reveal.
Right. Okay. Those are going to be, those are going to be kind of a little on the back end for just a few.
Okay.
Anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so very much.
This was
for
awesome.
joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad we finally got to this.
We're excited to have you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to reach us at www.medisconsultingservices.com. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.